So my name is Cosima Doerfel-Hill. I'm a member of the Limbo Project. I'm going to keep it on the, not on the, I'm going to keep it on the slide view so I can read my notes as well. I'm a member of the Limbo Project since it was started in 2017, and collectively we have published 2 books. As you can see, I've made the logo my background as well. Those are the front covers of our 2 books. In Limbo, the first book is the Gentleman with a Suitcase, and in Limbo 2, the second book is The Lady and the Child. You should be able to see them now, and they're actually mirror images of each other because we have undertaken mirroring journeys. So the first book is about Brexit testimonies from EU citizens in the UK, so people who've come from the EU countries and EFTA and EEA countries and Switzerland to live in the UK and are protected under the withdrawal agreement. And of course, having come to the UK before Brexit, we came here as citizens exercising free movement rights, and didn't have to undergo any onerous registration procedures or anything like that. And with Brexit, it became necessary to somehow secure our rights and differentiate from other migrants. In Limbo 2 is about British citizens in the EU and how they are affected as well by Brexit. There are lots of links. Once it's in PDF format, you will still be able to click on the links and go there. And I've also included the links to the recordings of the previous times I was invited by yourselves from June 2021 and June 2023. So some key dates, I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I would recommend, because I've added it, it wasn't on the previous version, is the first link on there, which is a very short clip of a very dear friend of mine, Wiebke Hott, who has since then moved to Germany because well, they felt they had to act very quickly. And she appeared on the 2nd of February 2017 on Question Time, and verbalized and articulated how citizens in EU citizens in the UK were left wondering about how to reconcile this referendum outcome with their residence in the UK. I'll move swiftly on. And these, again, are old links. These are things I've shown you before. We've already been talking about problems relating to the rollout of the digital-only immigration system since 2019. And before 2023, this was already an issue. But nonetheless, the Home Office has chosen to go ahead and make this digital system apply to all migrants to the UK. So I think by the time they're finished, we'll be talking about some 12 million people. And that was really finalized over the last few weeks. As of the 31st of December 2024, biometric residence permits are no longer valid for proving one's rights in the UK, and everybody has to use the digital system. So since I last saw you in 2023, I had a quick look at the recording, and I know I finished on Liverpool European Festival because in June 2023, we were right in the middle of it. So we've continued doing what we've been doing all along. We've continued supporting our communities, our members in the group, in our Facebook group. It's a safe space for people to actually have a rant and a moan sometimes, and to share how they are feeling about the continuing issues that are the result of the new reality that Brexit has brought for us. For me locally, that has also meant a lot of volunteering with other organizations and with other groups of migrants. I've been particularly working with asylum seekers simply because I recognize they are the most oppressed, and they are the ones that need the most help. And it's occurred to me that whatever happens to them in time, it will become our turn as well. So we've also been part of various academic research projects in a number of countries as far away as Italy, Spain, and even Tunisia, where a wonderful researcher wrote her PhD about how Brexit affects EU citizens resident in the UK. So that's brought us up to date, more or less. In this presentation, we're going back and forth in time quite a lot, so you're going to have to keep up because now I'm going to take you right back to 1948 when the Empire Windrush arrived at Tilbury, obviously docks, not socks. I do apologize. In June 1948. And on this ship were citizens of the UK and colonies, that was the title used at the time, from the Caribbean, who were invited to work in the UK, rebuilding the country after World War II. And among the passengers were also 66 Polish refugees returning to Europe. Fast forward to 2018 and the Windrush Scandal broke, which highlighted how people who were typically from communities of color, so there was a race element to this as well, who had migrated from the colonies of the British Empire and Commonwealth countries in the time span from 1948 to 1973, often upon being invited to come to, to the British motherland, and of course their descendants were wrongfully treated as illegal immigrants. This scandal brought into sharp contrast the importance of being able to prove one's status as a citizen or as a legal migrant with rights in the UK. And that's what led to the launch of the Windrush scheme in May 2018. So for a bit of context to the previous key dates that we've seen, that was in between the referendum result, the launch or the triggering of Article 50. So the decision has made the UK is definitely leaving the EU. But at that point in time in May 2018, there was no EU settlement scheme. There was not yet any provision for how EU citizens resident in the UK would be able to prove their status going forward after Brexit. The Windrush scheme offers all migrants and citizens of all countries, including EU citizens, who have resided in the UK since before the 31st of December 1988. So people like me who've been here forever, are given the means of updating and documenting a status they've already acquired in the past. So Windrush doesn't offer a new status. It confirms an existing indefinite leave to remain. It confirms that at some point in the distant past, you've already become free from immigration control. But you either have a very, very old document to prove it, like a letter from the 1970s or 80s, or you have no document because you entered the UK as an EU citizen exercising free movement, or back in my day, as an EEA citizen or EEC citizen. As part of the Windrush scheme, there is also a mechanism for Commonwealth citizens, but crucially not EU citizens, to obtain confirmation of their British citizenship and also the compensation scheme. But we're going to leave that to one side. That's not for EU citizens, and I am trying to focus a little bit on that very small cohort of people. So at that time in 2018, many long-term residents, typically women who were stay-at-home moms as well, were affected by the CSI requirements. And I have got a link in there to an article from LSC, which goes into great detail. I'm trying to resist the urge to rant about it at length, because otherwise we'll never get through this presentation. I personally was affected by the CSI requirement as well. In 2021, it was actually found that the UK unlawfully applied these requirements, and it was also unlawfully applied retroactively. So even though it's based on EU Directive 2004/38, which came into force in 2006, it was applied to a time before then. So in my case, since 1988 or whenever people arrived. So because of the CSI requirement, EU citizens like myself who were affected by the comprehensive sickness insurance requirement were not able to obtain a permanent residence document under EEA rules. And as I said, the EU settlement scheme did not yet exist. So for many EU citizens who were eligible under the Windrush scheme, they often applied specifically for the purpose of obtaining a physical card to prove their status. So as part of your Windrush application, you had to, of course, prove that you were in the UK since before 1988 and that you've been living here continuously since then and have not had any lengthy absences. And I nearly showed you my driving license then. That's not what I was looking for. And as part of the application process, you gave your fingerprints and you attended an appointment with the UK VI officers and had your biometric photo taken. And then you got one of these. If I can get it in the right place, maybe not. You can see my face, but nothing else. So that's my picture on my residence card. Hang on, let me knock off my background. Or maybe not. Yes. So now you should be able to see the card. So it's one of these. And as you can see from it, it has an expiry date of the 31st of December 2024. And in fact, every single BRP expired on the 31st of December 2024, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll come back to that later on because we're still kind of going through this chronologically. In 2019, the EU settlement scheme opened to the public. As part of the EU settlement scheme, and this is part of the pushback that was given to the Home Office and to the British government that, as part of the withdrawal agreement, we have, or we should have rights. Those acquired rights should not be conditional on whether you were working or had insurance. So proof of CSI, and at the time, the Home Office framed this as being ever so generous that they no longer required proof of comprehensive sickness insurance. They no longer require proof of comprehensive sickness insurance, but there's no physical proof of the status. So no plastic card to prove who you are. It's a digital status only. And especially for people who've been here since before 1980 or before 1989, so before the end of 88, they're not 25 anymore by definition. They are not necessarily as comfortable with having a digital only status that they need to access via a website and get a security code to their mobile phone or their email and then enter the security code and then access this website. It's a bit onerous for them. So many people chose to make a Windrush application if eligible, precisely to get this physical status as opposed to a digital status. So taking you back again in time, looking at how we got to the digital status and also what kind of problems there are with digital status and digital systems in principle. So in 2012, the website gov.uk was launched. The government's intention or their spin, if you like, at the time was in 2013 decided with a digital by default policy. So it was decided that by default, all public services should be accessible digitally. And the wording at the time was digital by default means digital services which are so straightforward and convenient that all those who can use digital services will choose to do so, while those who can't are not excluded. Well, that last phrase really didn't come true at all. And that can be seen very much with the rollout of universal credit, which was rolled out between 2013 and 2018. And actually, we're still seeing the migration to universal credit happening now. The last few cohorts of people are getting their migration notices as we speak. And I think it was originally set to be completed in 2028. So very much a long-term project. If you look at the extract that I've pasted in here, which is from a Channel 4 undercover team. They found that people working at the Universal Credit Contact Center really were almost encouraged to bully claimants. And what we're seeing both with this and with Home Office systems is that the hostile environment is facilitated by digital means. So it's people are treated in a way that advisors would never, work coaches, whatever you want to call them, in a job center, in a physical office, would never treat a person like that in front of them. But because it's happening through digital channels, it's easier. And the same, of course, we're finding with the Home Office and digital immigration status. So I'm not going to read all of this out to you. Fast forward to 2019. Now we're back in the realm of EU citizens, and the EU settlement scheme opens with the digital status only. The application is made through an app on a smartphone. You have to have a specific smartphone. You have to have an Android, and it has to be, I think it was at the start, Android 6. My Android 6 no longer works with it. So actually I had to get a new phone to still be able to run the app because the app was updated. It wasn't possible to do it on iPhones for, I think, about 2 years, quite a long time. And there were whole communities left behind, specifically the Roma, especially Roma children, who are not in control of making these applications themselves. But of course, children grow up, surprise, surprise. One day they turn 18, and like the descendants of the Windrush generation might wake up on their 18th birthday and find themselves at risk of being treated as an illegal immigrant with everything the hostile environment can throw at them. There was more academic research. So academic research started identifying digital barriers from way back in 2015. And then in 2021, 2022, we saw specific research about the EU settlement scheme. And now that the e-visa system is being rolled out, there's more research happening, and that, of course, will be published in the future, next year, probably. So let me scroll down on my notes. So on this slide, you see what the Home Office says. I let you read that while I share with you a press release from one of the grant-funded organizations, which says an estimated 4 million residents in the UK have physical proof of their immigration status, such as biometric residence permits, BRP, biometric residence cards, BRC, which are issued under the EUSS, passport endorsements, such as wet ink stamps in their passport or indefinite leave to enter, and vignette stickers in passports, such as entry clearance or visa vignettes. All of these are being replaced by an online system without any transitional arrangements, meaning that from the 1st of January 2025 onwards, people must use the digital system to prove their rights in the UK, such as the right to reside, work, rent, bank, use the NHS, etc. Failure to do so may affect clients from January 2025, as they will be unable to prove their rights to rent, work, bank, benefits, access to homeless assistance, etc. Due to all BRPs having an expiry date of the 31st of December 2024, we are expecting a surge of inquiries about applying for an e-visa. Having experienced the rollout of the EU settlement scheme, which introduced a fully digital system from the start, advice and support organizations are acutely aware of the problems clients might face. To gain access to the digital system, BRP and BRC holders must complete an online registration with UK Visas and Immigration, UKVI, for an e-visa. And the Home Office has set aside funding for community organizations to help people who struggle to manage the application process themselves. In order to complete the registration for a UKVI account, people must scan the microchip in their BRP and need to have access to phone and email, mobile phone that is, and email. With the introduction of digital barriers to accessing their rights, many of the most vulnerable people will be at risk of digital exclusion, which could lead to serious consequences, even exploitation, unemployment, homelessness, destitution, and sickness. And ultimately untreated sickness can lead to death. So it's a really, really serious issue, actually. And I don't think enough has been reported about the possible impacts. So, as you saw, the Home Office's view is that it's all quite straightforward. Everybody can access the digital system. Here's the reality. In spring 2024, the Home Office started sending invitation emails to addresses that had been added to their system. So this is called seeding the system with that address. So the address is entered, and then you get like an online token or digital token. You click on that link, and then you'll be able to enter your details. However, in sending these emails out, there were no personal details included, and a lot of these emails went to lawyers and legal representatives who then had no way to know which of their clients this particular link referred to. Only since the 6th of August 2024 can anyone set up their UKVI account, even without an invitation email. So now it's open to anyone. In September 2024, the Home Office started funding community organizations for 1 year until the end of August 2025 to help vulnerable people. Now, that then begs the question, how do you define vulnerability? And, you know, it's quite tightly defined. They have to have disabilities or be digitally illiterate and so on. The funding officially started on the 1st of September, but was only announced in September to the organization. So there was no time given to project setup or anything like that. So in reality, they didn't really start seeing clients until October. And then, sorry, last month and the month before, November and December. So, you know, the deadline is very much looming, the 31st of December. The Home Office decides to send emails to everyone they have an email for. I heard one report of a staff member at the 3 Million who had a fake email address that they set up because they're a British citizen, but they set it up in order to see how far they could get within the application process to take some screenshots. And even their fake email got a reminder email. So this was sent to people who already have a UKVI account, such as EU citizens who have a status under the EU settlement scheme. The wording was very confusing on many of the people who already have a status under EUSS. Sorry, I keep flipping to the next page. I don't mean to. Were very confused about what they were supposed to do in response to this email. So what is so confusing? What was so confusing? I will show you the email later I think it's the next slide. As a general rule, people who have a status under the EU settlement scheme already have a UKVI account, so they don't have to do anything. But when they set up their UKVI account, they did it as part of the EU settlement scheme. The word e-visa didn't exist. So now they're getting this messaging that they have to set up an e-visa, when actually e-visa is just a new word for something that already exists, that they already have. That is, if they use the identity checking app on their smartphone to scan the microchip in their passport when they made their original application. So there are some EU citizens, but not all, just a very tiny number, who made a paper application. They still need to set up an e-visa. Likewise, some, but not all, of the people who applied under the Ukrainian scheme or the Hong Kong BNO visa scheme already have a UKVI account because they use the identity checking app to set up their account. And you know, you have to remember whether you use the app or not in order to know whether you need to set up an e-visa. There is an acid test, and that is basically if you can check your status online and you can generate a share code, then you already have it. But I think it was confusing. Now, back to EU citizens who have a status under the Windrush scheme. Like I said, many of them specifically opted for Windrush instead of EU settlement scheme in order to avoid this digital status. Now, some of them have done both, like me. I did both. I actually did EUSS first and then did the Windrush application later, because the Windrush application involved 62 pages of documentation. So, you know, it took me a long time to pull all of that together. But, you know, some specifically did it in order to avoid the digital system. Now they're being forced into it. And let's have a look at the next slide, and you will see what I mean when I say that the emails from the Home Office are lengthy, not written in plain English, and they'll use a legalese register of language. I'm not going to keep this up long enough, but this is literally all one email, this and the next slide. This is sent to you in a language that by definition is not your first language, which you may or may not know reasonably well. This is all one email. And my favorite I have circled. If you can't use the internet, please go to this website. I don't think I have to explain that that is maybe somewhat problematic. I've given you here on the next slide a whole list of resources. They're mainly for helping people with e-visa, and they're mainly from the Home Office. And I've done that because I wanted to move on to more issues around confusion, or I might rearrange it actually. Now that I've gone through it, I might arrange the slides slightly differently. Less than 4 weeks before the expiry of BRPs, and Gavin, I hope you don't mind if I mention our email exchange, the Home Office made some announcements, and actually at this point, Gavin emailed me and said, should we still have this presentation? Should we still talk about the rollout of e-visa? It's been postponed, hasn't it? But actually, it wasn't postponed. It wasn't delayed. The deadline, the expiry date is printed on the card. Here, yeah. You can't change it unless you issue new cards. You can't do that with less than 4 weeks to go. What the Home Office did announce is that the cards would continue to be accepted for entering the UK until the 31st of March 2025. So basically just giving people a little bit of a grace period to set up their online status. The problem with that is that's all very well for entering the UK at the UK border once you've landed and you're facing, you know, a UK border force official. But you have to get there first. In order to get there, you have to check in at an airline check-in counter or at a ferry terminal. And carriers are obliged to check whether you have the right to enter the UK. And this is where the problems have so far arisen. Airline staff are not always clued up about this. And frankly, I find there is a sense of almost entitlement on the part of the UK Home Office. There are 205 countries in the world, or 206. You're expecting airline staff at a check-in counter on the other side of the world to know the inner workings of the UK Home Office with a couple of weeks' notice. I just don't think it's realistic. The other thing that they did announce, which is very welcome, is that legacy documents, such as, you know, wet ink stamps and passports, are not actually becoming nil and void, because again, that would put people at risk of everything the hostile environment has to throw at them. However, I would still say anybody who has a legacy document should make a no time limit application and should update their status and join the digital system, because I'm afraid to say that is the reality. So we have seen instances of people being denied boarding at overseas airports. There's a link to an article, and flights delayed because of problems with the e-visa. And I would like to share with you something that was sent to me by a colleague of mine. So this is somebody who is very digitally literate, who is an EU citizen, has a status under the EU settlement scheme, and has been using the digital status for the last 5 years successfully to prove her status at many opportunities. And she wrote to me saying, my experience so far is I tried to log into the gov.uk website just to try the view and prove page and get a share code for my settled status, only for me to be denied access, saying that my details do not match what they have on their system. Meanwhile, I'd got share codes many times in the past for donkey's years before now with the same details that I use currently, as none of my details have changed. I have since tried about 4 weeks ago to contact the Home Office to make a complaint through the number left on the gov.uk website, to no avail. They only sent me a link to file my complaint, which I'm yet to do. This is what you get from a system that deliberately enjoys upsetting people's rest of mind. As it stands, I don't even know what is happening regarding this confused e-visa and where I stand with my status. It's a whole bunch of confusion. Unbelievable. And we'll be phoning the Home Office on Monday to find out what's going on. So not only are they adding 4 million people to this digital system that has a lot of glitches and a lot of problems, the existing ones are having more glitches and more problems. So I want to leave you on a positive note, though, of course. We are not just taking it lying down, we are pushing back. And that is mainly organized by the 3 million. So just like here at the In Limbo Project, where we have embraced asylum seekers and all migrants by saying, you know, we need to show, as EU citizens who have migrated, we need to show solidarity to other migrants. Likewise, at the 3 million, they've said, okay, we have a bee in our bonnet about digital status, and we are campaigning about digital status already. We have done so for the last 6 years, and we are going to continue, and we are now going to expand that campaign to include everybody affected by digital status. So there's a hashtag, fix the digital status, and they've created a bust card. So I've put the PDF, well, PNG, the picture of the bust card in here. And it's a card that you can print out and present to somebody at, for example, at an airline check-in counter with a QR code that takes them to the .gov.uk page to explain what's going on. And like I say, we're hopeful that this is helping people prove that, you know, they do have the right to fly to the UK.